Good to see you guys. It really, really is. I have missed you a lot. And it's just good to be back here, standing in the saddle again. Seeing all of you out here today is really wonderful for me. And for those of you who don't know, I have just spent the last 3 months on sabbatical, and it was a fantastic experience. And I just want to start by saying how grateful I am to all of you, to the whole congregation, for giving me the opportunity to do this. I know that most of you don't get the chance to do something like this, except for those of you who are educators who do it every year. Most of us, normal people, don't get a chance to just blow off 3 months and to get the kind of rest and refreshment that I've been able to have here. So thank you so much for that. I wish all of you could get that time off. Most employers are not smart enough to realize the obvious, that happy, well-rested employees are more efficient, more productive, more creative, more innovative, more loyal, and just basically nicer to be around than people who are worked constantly all the time. But you guys were wise enough to give that to me, so I really want to say thank you for all of that. So today is kind of more of a report than it is a sermon, what I did on my summer vacation. So I hope that you can find some inspiration in it. First of all, I've got to say special thanks to our great staff here at East Wind Community Church because, it's really because of them that I felt comfortable to do this. I absolutely knew that it was being left in competent hands, and I had no apprehension whatsoever about going because we have a great staff here at this church. Halfway through the sabbatical, Mary, our church administrator, who most of you know, wrote me what I'm sure she meant to be a reassuring text. And what she said was, quote, "Everything is going super in your absence." And I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I wanted things to go well during my absence, but I'm not sure I wanted them to be super in case the reason they were super is because I was absent. But, of course, I knew that it would be super, and it's because of our great staff. So special thanks particularly to our administrator, Mary, and also to our associate pastor, Jesse, because they carried the bulk of the load that I left behind for them. And actually, I'm sure the staff was a little bit grateful to get a break from me for a bit. It gave them a chance for some real growth and a chance to explore maybe some new avenues without worrying what the old man would think. And so that's been really, really good. And how about the growth that we have seen in our associate pastor, Jesse Fatal? It's absolutely unbelievable, yes. He's not in here now. He's covering for Andrew. Andrew has the youth staff away on a retreat this weekend. But Jesse started here when he was like 14. And now he's almost like a real grown-up. So while I was gone, he steered the ship. He took the group off to Kenya. He delivered great sermons. He put together all of our small groups for the fall and for the start of our new year. And basically, he met the needs of an entire congregation while I was gone. So we're very, very lucky to have that guy, and especially me more than anybody else. And I look around after I walked in. Mary sort of forbade me from coming to church during the whole time. And when I came in, everything is so nice and slick. The lobby is completely transformed with that great new furniture out there. Instead of those tables with coffee stains and crayon marks, it almost looks like we know what we're doing out there. And then I come back and you've got the new seat backs. It's all so organized. It looks so much better with those. In fact, they kind of remind me a little bit of what, the seat pockets in front of you on the airplane there. So I think the only thing we need to add is the air sickness bags for when the sermons get a little bit nauseating. So anyway, about my sabbatical, I got to tell you, it was great. And so people are asking me, well, what did you do on your sabbatical? Well, I did have a chance to take some great trips. The biggest trip, the longest trip I took, I went to Wyoming to the Wind River Range, which is absolutely spectacular. I backpacked with a few friends for 7 days out in the wilderness, and it was a wonderful experience. But the very best trip and the highlight of my summer was that my son got married in McCall in September, and it was just so exciting to be able to perform his ceremony and to get out there. We did it right on Payette Lake up there, and beautiful, and I just love love my new daughter-in-law, and I even love her parents. I really do. That had to be the highlight for me. Mostly, though, during the course of the 3 months, I was right here in Boise. Mostly, I stuck around. And my primary activity was just to read, and I got to actually read a lot of really, really great stuff. I did read some kind of wonky, nerdy, sort of academic theology stuff, as much as I could stand anyway. Actually, I have a good friend who's a professor at NNU, and he wrote a book that's really interesting and really presents some new ideas, so I love that. I read a lot of history because I'm strange and I like that kind of thing. And some of my favorite authors are Doris Kearns Goodwin and David McCullough and people like that. And I studied particularly a lot about some of our great American heroes and figures and these people who met these enormous challenges with courage and with wisdom. And what I saw is that they actually make the same mistakes that I do. The difference is that they actually learn from their mistakes instead of keep doing the same stupid things over and over and over. So that was really good. I read one of my favorite authors. His name is David Foster Wallace. He is not a Christian author, far from it. But this is a guy that has just an amazing command of the language. And as a pastor, I really appreciate that. It's just surprising and delightful the way he chooses words. And every time I read him, I think, I got to learn how to put a sentence together. And so that was great. Probably the spiritual highlight of my reading was I read a book by Anne Lamott. And it's a book on prayer, and I think it's the best book on prayer I've ever read. And the book is simply called Help, Thanks, Wow. And she says those are the only 3 words you need to have an effective prayer life. So I really recommend that one for you. But of course, I also got to spend a lot of extra time with my Bible. And I was really grateful for that. And I really wanted to concentrate this summer on a problem that I've seen, or at least it's created a problem for me, in the contrast between what Jesus teaches and what Paul teaches. Jesus came into this very kind of locked down, strident, dogmatic, oppressive sort of religious environment. And he said to the people, you know what? It isn't all about doctrine and dogma and theology. And it's not all about being all judgy and moralistic. And then the Apostle Paul comes along later, and he says, yes, Jesus, yay, Jesus, amen to Jesus. And by the way, it is all about doctrine and dogma and theology and about being judgy and moralistic. So a big part of my study this summer was to try to look at that conflict or apparent conflict between those two, try to understand the people to whom they were speaking and the settings, and try to bring some resolution there. And I hope to share some of those thoughts with you in the weeks and in the months ahead as we go forward. Also, I had a chance in the early part of the sabbatical to finish up work on a book that I have authored, actually being released next month. It's a book that probably no one will read but my mother, and I'm sure that she'll be happy to loan you her copy as soon as she finishes coloring it in. So, the other thing that was great on my sabbatical is I developed this whole morning routine, and I've really come to love this routine. It involves hydration and stretching. It involves breathing, actually cooking a real breakfast. This is a novel concept for me. A little bit of exercise, some sun exposure. So I told Mary, I don't think I'm going to be able to come into work anymore until about 10:30. And then, of course, I'm going to have to go back home for my 12:30 nap. So people are asking me, well, did you visit other churches on Sundays during your sabbatical for your own spiritual edification? No. That was the kind of thing I was on sabbatical from. But what I did do on Sundays is every Sunday morning I would get on my bike and I would bike downtown, and I got to see what you do when you're not going to church. It's amazing how many church people you could find outside of church on Sunday morning. I saw you on the golf course, I saw you in the restaurants, I saw you at Art in the Park, I saw you on your bikes. But when I saw you, even if you didn't see me, I noticed that you still had a faint whiff of guilt about you. And that's all I ask, really, if you're not going to be here, just that you would feel bad about it. Anyway, people are asking me most of all, what did I get from my sabbatical experience? And I would say that the main thing that I got from it is just rest and restoration. And that's really what it was all about. Most of you know that after 22 years since we started this church, we've pretty much been full tilt the whole time. And after a couple of rough personal years for me, that I was feeling a little bit worn out. But I can honestly say that I feel great. And this sabbatical really did do for me what I needed it to do for me, which is to help me feel restoration. So what were the big insights? What did I learn? What new things did God teach me over this time? And there are so many things, and I'm really excited to be sharing those with you in the months and the weeks ahead. But here's one little thing. I learned that laziness is an art form, and I endeavored to become as accomplished at it as I possibly could. I think I have the gift. Sometimes in mid-afternoon, I'd just be laying on the couch, and I would literally listen to the sound of the ice melting in the glass of lemonade there that I had next to me. And I would have to work up the ambition to reach over and pick up that glass. And so it was really interesting. But I did find out that if you're going to be a lazy person, you really need a cover story. And I discovered the perfect cover story, which is simply this: I'm working on a book. That's all you need to tell people. You work on a book just up in your head while you're sitting on a couch. You get a legal pad, and every now and then you write down a sentence, and then you put that down, and you go away, and you think about it some more, and you come back, and you cross that sentence out. You're working on a book. It's, absolutely a legitimate, respectable pursuit. And if people ask you, how's that book coming? You say, well, it's coming along slowly. And when they say, after 10 years, they say, well, whatever happened with that book? I said, well, I wrote on that book, and I labored over it, and then I read it, and, it just wasn't expressing things the way that I felt that they should be expressed, so I threw it all away. I deleted every page. And then when you say that, they actually commiserate with you, and they admire your integrity for not putting out something that doesn't meet your high standards. So you have an excuse for 10 years, and then people, commiserate with you and admire you. So it just doesn't get any better than that. You're working on a book. And it's amazing how long you can just lie there. You'd think you'd start to feel guilty, but you wait, and it doesn't come. So anyway, I have two kind of big observations I want to share with you today from my sabbatical that kind of actually grow out of the experience of having a chance to be a little bit lazy. And the first big observation is the fact that everything has a season. And a very familiar passage that all of us have heard before is in Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And it says this: there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. This familiar passage has taken on a new meaning for me as a result of my sabbatical experience. So during this time, which for me was a period of rest, a time to dance and a time to laugh, it taught me something new actually about the nature of time itself. Before I went on the sabbatical, my number one fear was that the whole thing was just going to whiz by and seem like it went so fast, and then I'd come back just as tired as I was when I left. But that is not what happened. It seemed to me like I had been on sabbatical forever. I think back to those early days of the sabbatical, and it honestly seems like it was like a year ago when all of that happened. It's almost surreal and just pleasantly weird the way it affected my perception of the passage of time. It's a strange thing, our perception of time. Something about slowing down makes life feel slower, and it makes you feel like you are actually living more life. And the truth is, when we slow life down, our perception of time slows down. But when we are living in a full sprint, then time accelerates. You say, well, sure, Mark, that's great for you that you were able to have that experience. But dropping out for 3 months is just not an option for me. And I absolutely understand that. But here's what you have to know. You can actually decelerate your perception of time if you practiced occasional periods of stillness and reflection. It doesn't have to be for 3 months. It could be for 3 minutes. It could be a pause during the course of your day. It could be 1 day a week. This relates directly to the fourth commandment. And you'll say, well, sure, of course, the fourth commandment. I'm like, which one is that? Well, it's this. It says, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Oh, that one. Well, who takes that seriously? It says, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter or your maidservant or your manservant. You got one of those, right? Nor your animals, nor the alien within your gates. For the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. We tend to think of this as the least important of the 10 commandments. This is the one we most easily blow off. You know, it doesn't seem to fit. Like you've got all these big moral imperatives like don't murder, don't lie, don't steal, and get plenty of rest. I mean, it doesn't seem to fit. It sounds more like a prescription for getting over a cold than it seems like a prescription for a moral society. Better ideas for the fourth commandment might have been, thou shalt squeeze the toothpaste from the bottom, thou shalt not run with scissors, something more practical. So today, this is the commandment that we take the least seriously. Sure, a commandment like that was fine in 3000 BC, but surely this is the modern world, and God would rescind that commandment. Well, he hasn't, and don't call me Shirley. By the way, the word sabbatical really comes from the word Sabbath. So a Sabbath is a rest period every 7 years. Sabbatical are 7 days, and sabbatical, the rest period every 7 years. Now, I've been here. We started the church 22 years ago, so technically you owe me 2 more. But we all need a rhythm wherever it is and however it comes and however much time we can take. We all need a rhythm that includes stillness, whether it's once a day or once a week or once a year. It's absolutely clear that Jesus practiced this faithfully in his life. He was always pulling away from the crowd, always withdrawing, and he was resting. And this is a regular feature of his life. And if you don't do this kind of thing, the worst part will be that your life will feel like it's just blowing right by you. Your kids will grow up way too fast. Your moments of enjoyment will just seem way too brief, and you will feel like you are marching so rapidly toward the day of your death. But there's something else about this, and that is that you will never be at your best, and you will never become what you need to become if you don't make rest and reflection a part of the rhythm of your life. One of the other things I did a lot during the sabbatical is I listened to a lot of TED Talks. I love the TED Talks. But one guy in particular, his name is Boyd Varte. And this is a guy who grew up on a wildlife refuge in South Africa. And he would often take these documentary filmmakers out into the wild, and they would go out and literally sit in a blind for like 48 hours or sometimes for a week just watching the animals. And he said it's amazing the wisdom that you gain from just sitting there and watching nature and how nature functions. He says there's a pace in the natural world, and there is a genius, and that most of that rises out of a state of being still. He would watch lions as for 18 hours a day, they would just lie there in deep rest. And just watching them, he said he learned about the power of rest. Because we think about lions when they're in action. But most of a lion's life is rest. And when the temperature starts to shift, they feel the change in their bodies. And out of that deep rest comes an intensity of movement. And they hunt with a ferocity and with a focus, and they are extremely efficient. But when they're resting, they're never thinking about being efficient. And when they're being ferocious, they're never doing it wishing that they could rest. But they're always just where they are. And that is wisdom, to be where you are. to find a rhythm between action and stillness. That's the natural world. But in the human world, we've lost that rhythm, and we've lost that wisdom. That fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath, the one we think as being least important, embodies that wisdom. Now, I am no lion. I am more like a moody house cat. But after my sabbatical, I feel like I'm waking up. And I feel like I'm really ready to hunt. And I'm just excited about everything. Honestly, I've just been pacing around all week waiting for this weekend. My whole self is just tingling to get back in. And that was an extremely valuable lesson for me in my sabbatical. Second big observation, related very much to it, and also coming out of the stillness that I was able to experience, is that everybody needs a thing. And again, one of the passages that kept coming to my mind over and over again during the sabbatical is Matthew chapter 10, where Jesus says, whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. And I had a realization as my sabbatical was drawing to a close that this is another passage that's taking on new meaning for me now, and a more urgent meaning. When I was on sabbatical, it was very easy for me to be self-absorbed. And it was wonderful. For this short season of my life, it was kind of all about me, and that has been great. It was the right thing to do for 3 months, because to everything, there is a season. And no doubt, there was a time, this period, where I needed to put everything away and make it about me. But I can sense that slipping into that mode forever would quickly become destructive. I don't think another month of sabbatical would have been good for me. My sabbatical was about working on my health, attending to my house, spending time with my kids, hanging out with my friends, pursuing my hobbies, and basically making it about me. And I'm glad I did it. It was the right thing to do for a season, but not for a lifetime. Because whoever wishes to find their life will lose it. And whoever loses their life for his sake is the one who will find it. It's so easy to make your life about you, mostly because we're encouraged to do this all the time. We live in a consumer society where from our earliest infancy, we have been encouraged to make it all about ourselves. But let me tell you something. You need something bigger than yourself, something to live for, something that you can lose your life in. You need a thing. Now, I needed a break from my thing, but I realize now more than ever that I am not done with my thing. I need my thing to make me whole and healthy, relationally, spiritually, and emotionally. God wants you to find a thing that you can lose your life in, that you can devote your life to. Now, you could devote your life to a thing of your own choosing, how to be healthy or how to be good looking or how to be rich or how to have a romantic adventure. Or you can devote your life to a nobler thing. And your life will be defined by whatever thing it is that you embrace. So have you found a thing that's worthy of your best energies, that's worthy of losing your life in? What problem are you solving? What are you making better? How is the world going to be different because you're in it? What's your thing? And if you don't know, you need to figure it out. Here at Eastwood Community Church, we have always encouraged people to discover their life's meaning and mission and purpose. And one of the things I'm most convinced of through my sabbatical experience is that we, as a community, need to start making it easier for you to discover your thing. And we need to make it easier for you to engage in that thing, whatever there is. There's so many possible choices out there. After my sabbatical, I feel more committed than ever to my thing. And of course, my thing is to help irreligious people to discover the truth and the beauty and the wisdom in a life devoted to following Jesus Christ. But it is also my thing to help religious people discover and be inspired to make their life more like Jesus and less like Pharisees. It's my thing to hopefully transform Christian culture, especially here in this community, to inspire a new and a more positive kind of Christian that isn't against everything and against everybody, that isn't dogmatic and strident and angry and defensive or judgy or mean-spirited, or thinking that we're right and everybody else is wrong and going to hell and we can't wait for them to get there. But instead, my thing is to help to create a Christian culture that is more inclusive, more open, smarter, more intellectually credible, more relevant, and more relatable to people outside the church walls. A Christian culture that is more positive, more joyful, and more loving. That's my thing. And I'll tell you what, that thing gets me so excited about living my life, and it's helped me to find my life, because that thing is way bigger than I am, and it's way bigger than my short, small, little life. It's not about that. Instead, it's about his kingdom and his power and his glory forever. And that thing has me charged up and ready to go for another 7. Let's pray together. God, we are so grateful for this life that you have given us, this one and only life that each and every one of us has. And our desire is to make it count and to make it meaningful. So, Lord, help each and every one of us to find our thing, whatever it is, but the thing that you want us to be doing that will give our life meaning and purpose. Help us to discover the most efficient ways to accomplish our thing and to make sure that we're including rest and reflection as a part of a rhythm of our life so that that fourth commandment can bring its wisdom and its power into our being. God, we're grateful for the community that you've given us here, for these people around us. Help us to be committed to each other, to be devoted to each other in love, so that we can not be alone in our thing, but that we can feed on one another's power and strength, and that we can serve as an example to one another of what it really means to be your followers and to look like you. God, we're grateful for this. We pray all this in your name. Amen. Let's all stand and sing.